Hi guys, it's Crazy Sam. Welcome back to my channel. So this is the first of a few videos that I'm going to be putting up showing some building techniques that I use while building my outposts, and also some tips and tricks that you can use when you're creating your own layouts. So let's go right into it. So I just basically created a blank outpost, as you can see. Now this layout that you can see, I mean the base border, that is your max level. So when you start the game, let me show you. I mean you would get a pretty small, maybe around 5 squares or something like that, maybe about that much approximately, more or less. That is the area that you would get when you start off the game, after you get access to building your own outpost and making changes. That is approximately the area that you would get. It could be a bit smaller, I'm not perfectly sure about how big it actually is. And so that's what you would start off with, and then you would have to use your tech upgrade section, in which you would have ATC enhancement. So there are 10 levels to it, so you would need to upgrade each one to get up to the max level, which is 10. So a level 10 ATC would be that size, what I have right here, as in the entire. So that's basically the first step in terms of building it up and getting it to that stage, is going through tech upgrade and upgrading your ATC. So general rules, as you can see, let me just undo that. What you would normally get when you start off, I think they give you the base outpost, which is created automatically when you start doing your initial first few missions and everything. It'll give you a sort of small made up outpost, which you can then edit and upgrade and add new turrets and things like that. So what I'm showing you here is just for building techniques, more or less. I'm not going to actually build an outpost. That takes a lot of time, and we'll just start with some basics. So you have your floor, as I call it, the base floor. Certain things can be placed on the floor itself directly without needing any kind of supporting tiles or anything of that sort. Again, you can just place a single one and drag. It will automatically place that component into the slots. Now the slots, if you notice, are those green dots that you can see all along the ground. So based on the components, the slots would matter in terms of how you can place a certain component. So you could place it like that, down the middle like that, or you could place it at the end like that. So there are different settings that you can use. I mean, in terms of when you're designing your outpost, you can make all those changes. I'm going through the very basics of it just for people to understand. There are some new players that keep joining the game, so when you first start off, it's quite difficult. I've seen a lot of videos, but they're going into the more slightly advanced building techniques. So I just decided to start from the bottom and slowly build it up, so it gives a better idea of what can be done, and some tips here and there which hopefully will help the newer players. So one of the most basic components that you use for building is your utility tile, as you can see. So that's basically your base. Normally most bases that you create would have this using up a lot of space. Like your levels will be created using this style mostly. There are different types of this. So you have your regular utility, which is the one which I've put down. Let me go a bit closer. Then you also have the hollow tile. The hollow tile is it's a transparent version of the same thing. It's the same dimension in terms of size, but it's got a transparent section in the center, so you can actually see through it. So use wise, it's pretty much the same thing. It does the same function as your utility, but only thing, it gives you that added benefit of being kind of see-through, so you can place it at a higher level and it will allow you to see the level under. So you can sometimes place it to show off a certain thing which can be seen from a certain angle, so to say. And that's another of the tiles. Then you have your angular ones, like your 45-degree triangle tile there. And so there are, again, when you see there are certain ways that you can place it. It will lock on automatically, so you could get it back to this and you can create basically what looks like a utility tile. The only difference is it's going to have a different set of slots on there. So what I can do on that combination of two tiles, I cannot do it on my regular utility. As you can see, it doesn't let me go diagonally, for example. So there are certain things, you can use this to create a certain angle somewhere, gives you a slight difference in the looks. As if I'm using the same pillar on a normal utility, I can go in a straight line or like basically vertically down, depending on where I'm using it. Like if I use it here, I can bring it down this side. So again, the placement is pretty important in terms of what you can place and how you can place it. So again, like I said, once you select a certain component from this side, you will see the slots appear all along on the ground and also on your components, and you can only place it in a certain way. There are multiple variations, obviously, like which direction you want to place it at, and accordingly you can plan out further. Now this was just a pillar just to show. Let me just undo everything. That should go away. Similarly, you have your normal triangle tile. That one, the one I put before, is called a 45-degree triangle tile, and then you have the normal triangular tile. Again, the placement, as you can see on the slots, it makes it difficult sometimes how you want to place it. So you could have it like that. These can be used sometimes to create what I call sort of a design. If you place them in a certain manner, that, for example. So now you have like a design that's created, and then you can even sometimes, depending on what you're going to use on it, you could have, for example, MG turrets which are all facing in different directions. This is just an example. People use it for different things, but it just gives you an idea what can be used. Since it's a small tile, you're not going to have too much space. So with the MG, which is requiring the least amount of space in terms of your weapon placements, it becomes easier to do it on something like this. So you could have like a column on which on top of it you have this surrounding it on all sides, so it gives you a more sort of almost 360-degree targeting option. So there's different applications for those tiles. It just depends how you want to use it while you design your base. And going back to the tiles, then we have your small tile, which is also very useful. Certain places you'll see there's a small gap which needs to be filled up, otherwise it looks very weird. So that space you can use by filling it up with small tiles, because a regular sized tile would not fit in there. It wouldn't allow you to put that, so that's when these things come in handy. There are a few other things that you can use them for. I sometimes use it to create like a link between two components. So if I have this here and there's some empty space to even transfer power, I can use that. For example, I can't do it here, but I'll show that at a later part. So like I said, different applications, it's just a question of how you want to use it, and as you practice and you try out, you figure out on your own kind of where things can be used. But it's very useful, especially the small tile is very useful. Coming to the basic part, once you start off, you would generally have like your base level, which is your lowest level. I would always suggest that you don't use it right at the edge. One of the reasons for saying that is it gives you a bit of extra space for your upper levels that you can then extend it out. So there's more components that you can place on there, whereas if I have it right on the edge, I don't have space to put anything beyond it, and I'm already on the edge of it. Yes, there are certain ways of still extending the edge part. So as you can see, this is the border, but no matter, even if it's the smaller one which I had shown at the start, you can always go one tile beyond the border. It allows that, as you can see here. So this is all placed beyond the border, but it's still acceptable. It still allows it. I can still place components on top of this. That I can place guns on top of it, which are beyond the boundary. If I want to add something beyond this, it's not going to let me, and it's going to give me an error there. As you can see, you get a little flashing yellow border, and it says outside of construction boundary. So it won't allow me to set another tile beyond that. So that's another thing that you can keep in mind, that you can go one tile extended. I'm talking in terms of utility. Another sort of variation to it is if further on in the game you can unlock what's called an armored tile. So that one, if you place it, let me see, this one actually allows you to go a bit further out. Just trying to get the placement properly here. This won't really work in that scenario. I just need to clear some of these things. So if I have So as you can see, this allows me to place an armored tile beyond. So for example, if I use a utility, you see how much it can go out to, and I can't place another one on top of here like I had shown, whereas it allows me the placement of an armored tile. The main reason for that is because your actual connections for the slots are only on that edge there up to here, and even if I remove this one, it's still valid. So it's just the connection to the other components is within the boundary. That's why it allows you to still use it there, whereas if I do it with a utility tile, I can just do one more. I cannot go beyond that. So you can see the difference right now with the yellow border, that it's one tile length outside the actual boundary that is allowed by the game. So there are certain ways that you can do it, and yes, this can still be used in terms of placing weapons and things on there. It's not just that there's certain things you cannot do, like I couldn't place a wall at the end, a generic panel. I can't use it here. I can use it maybe halfway. I can do it there. So I'm losing out on this space here beyond the wall, but there's just empty space. There's nothing there. I can't place any components. I can't place any weapons or anything of that sort. However, while saying that, first there are certain exceptions to that rule. Like for example, if I take a Hellfire, I can place an Hellfire turret on there, which is still beyond the boundary, as you can see. Similarly, I can place, so we are looking at that size in terms of, you know, the placement and the slots. So similarly, the new Exterminator also has the same size. Just need to add another tile here to show that. Like that, and then I can go back and I can place an Exterminator on there as well. So as you can see, they are both beyond the allowed boundary, and even with your one tile rule, I'm able to place it beyond that. So it's another, well, you can call it a tip, that you can extend it beyond. If you place an armored tile at the edge, then you can go with some of the big guns, which otherwise it wouldn't allow if I do it with a regular tile. I'll show you the regular tile. As you can see, I can't go beyond this. I can't take it further out here. So if I had to place something on here, that is the furthest that I can place it in terms of towards the front, with the enemy direction as it's showing here. That is the furthest I would place it. But if you notice the other two, it's much further out, one tile beyond that. So that's another tip that you can sort of keep in mind, but that works only with your armored tile. So it's a combination of your armored tiles and your normal utility tiles. And coming back, like I had mentioned, I would normally never build right up to the edge. It depends how you want to do it. I normally like to take it at least one tile, about a tile or so within the boundary, and then start building the base from there, as in the base layer. So I would have it something like that. I'm just showing this for illustrating my point. I haven't placed the rest of the things, and it would be one or two. It depends on what I plan on doing, and I normally would build as I go. I don't really sort of have a set plan. I just start building, and as it gets along, I just start placing stuff and, you know, having ideas on what should go where. Again, that works once you've played the game enough and you sit down with, you know, building outposts and spending some time in here. That's when it starts getting easier. Initially it's going to be a bit hard. I mean, it's frustrating at times. I've gone through it, so I know that it's frustrating. I mean, you can plan an entire thing and then you go to a certain portion of it, and then the game would just give you an error saying it's invalid, and then you have to think of a way to work around that, because you build the rest of the things, everything else falls in place. But just because of one small tile or something like that, and it's going to give you an error. So now here, because I just started at a weird place, it's not giving me the right, if you see it's not aligned, it's somewhat off. So if I do it here, it's still not aligned. If you notice, the frame is not aligning with that frame. So that can be a slight problem. Sometimes it doesn't matter, but once you place things on top of it, the alignment is a bit off. So it doesn't look nice once you start creating the rest of the outpost. So normally you would just either go another square down and see if this one fits properly, or I just start again and remove this entire row and place it at a different level. it's difficult to show everything. I mean, there's so many things there, but if I can see again, it doesn't really, it's not really aligning. So anyway, we'll skip that portion. It's not really important. It was just to give you an idea of how I would start building, as in I'm not building it right up to the edge on that square there. I'm building it a bit inside. And generally how people do it is your bottom layer is normally, as they call it, the engine room. So once you have enough components, and let me show you, enough, for example, battery packs and resource storages, this entire level, the bottom level, would be packed with rows and rows of battery packs and resource storages. So what I actually mean by rows of it is, you would have like a grid, you would do that all the way to the end till wherever your outpost finishes. You drag it across as well. Let me just do it till here just to show. And then again, I'm using generic panels for this. Another advantage of generic panels is it's double-sided, so you can, it's got slots on either side. So when you take a battery pack and you stick it on there, it would have battery packs going all the way to the end, and then battery packs on the other side as well, all the way to the end. And this would be continued all across, like the entire section, whatever you have building area left, that would be filled up on both sides. And I would suggest using generic panels because of this double-sided feature, because then you can actually pack it close together. This, now again, if you notice the alignment, so it would be packed up like this, and then underneath you would have, say, something like, let me just grab this. So what I've done here is called the X-ray mode, in case you didn't know. So they have an X-ray mode which will sort of show me what's underneath and giving me outlines for the things that are on there. So it allows me now, if I do it from here, it makes it, for example, from here, it makes it difficult for me to actually place something because I can't see it. So if I go into X-ray mode, I can now place it. As you can see, it gives me like an X-ray look through the topmost layer, and you can move that up and down. If you notice, there's like a frame on the sides here, that's your X-ray mode. And X-ray mode is basically done by just F. You just press the F key and you have on and off. It's a toggle thing, so you can toggle it on or toggle it off, and then you can move it. I move it using the middle mouse button. If you press shift and the middle mouse button, scroll it, and it will move up and down, because this is just the base level. Once you start building and you have multiple levels on top of it, the X-ray mode comes in very handy if you have to place or edit a certain portion. If you have a lot of things crammed in there, then it becomes difficult. So using the X-ray mode, I would then have an entire row of resource boxes. And another thing, like I mentioned at the start, there are certain things you can place on the floor directly, like without any tiles. A resource storage, for example, I cannot place it. I do need some sort of base, like a tile or something on there. So I can place it here, I can place it here or here, but I can't place it out on the bare floor on the side there. So normally that is why also I cover as much as possible with utility tiles, so it cuts out that problem. It just depends how you want to build the base. So the entire engine room, as we call it, is your level, which is packed with battery packs like this all along the length and breadth of it, and then you would have like resource crates underneath. And there are a lot of variations to this as well. Some people like to do it differently. because some people would have maybe a couple of rows or columns of this, and then they would have, for example, let me get rid of all of these. I mean, I've also done it on a couple of my bases. I don't use it that often, but you replace that with maybe utility walls. So you would have a column or a row of utility walls on which, depending on what point you're in the game, you can either use your regular generators, which are also important. So the generators will amplify your core, so this value is what will get affected every time you stick a generator. If you notice, now it's 677. If I put a generator, it gives me 10 more. So every generator gives me 10 for my X boost field, and so on. So you would have a entire row. Again, like I said, variations. There are different variations to this. It just depends how you want to do it. Like, I can do the same thing with maybe pillars. You can have an entire row of pillars going from, on this it won't work. For that I would need a proper row of, so I'm going to work on that. Change this, because otherwise it's not going to allow me to demonstrate what I'm trying to show. So if I have that, I would have, for example, an entire row of pillars, and this actually allows me to put a lot more. If you notice on the utility panels, I can just stick one generator on there on each panel, whereas if I do pillars, then I can do one on top and one under that as well. So for every 2 pillars I can do 2 generators on one side. Again, I can do it double-sided, so I could do 2 generators there, then put 2 more on this side. Like that. So there are different ways you can do it. It's just as you keep doing it, you find out new ways, and you watch other people's videos and you realize there are more ways of doing the same thing. Like another way which I like to sort of, this was manually placing each generator. I do the drag and drop, or whatever you want to call it. So now, for example, if I do this, if you notice, there is a big gap between the placements. Right? It looks like I'm just wasting space. So I have this technique or a trip that I use, which is I just go for the next one and then drag it again. If you notice, now that spacing is getting smaller. I go a third time and I'm going to exactly fill in those places that's blank. So in the end, I still have all of them next to each other, and it takes me much lesser time to actually do it. I've seen a lot of people who go manually placing each one, and then you place the next one, and so on and so on. So I found this, I just discovered it by accident, to be honest, because normally when you drag it, it takes a certain spacing automatically. So once you utilize that, then you can just go for the next one, place again, go for the next one, and place again. Now if you notice, they're all next to each other, and takes me a fraction of the time compared to doing it manually, as in taking each one and placing it and so on. So coming back to this, that is what you would have. So you would have an entire row of this with generators. When you start off early, you're going to have the small generators, and when you go a bit further in the game, then you're going to be able to craft super generators. Those are the big ones like here, and then you can place super generators on there like that in a line. So again, if you noticed, the range has just jumped up from what it was, because the super generators are giving you 150 boost for this one on every one. So if I remove one, you see that number goes down, and when I add it, so this gets tricky sometimes about the placement. So if you notice, it keeps jumping automatically to the different things. So what I try and do is I try and focus it, the mouse pointer, on those little slots that you can see, and then I try and place it according to the slot. So I go closer, for example, and I'll focus on this and then bring it down, and then I get the placement. So when you're starting out, that's very frustrating. I had a very hard time trying to get that, how actually it works, because you try and put it in one place and it just keeps automatically latching on. And there was some option somewhere, though I've never checked it out, where it there is some, maybe in settings, I'm not sure, where you can turn that off, where it auto latches and auto locks onto a certain thing. I'm not very sure, but I think I had seen something like that in somebody's video, but I'm not totally sure of that. So that's another way of for your layers on how you can put things. You can use different components. Some people use pillars, so they'll have all lines of pillars going across, and then only on the outer walls you would have maybe generic panels and things like that. With the panels as well, to fortify, now since this is the outside, if you notice when I hover over it, it's got a health of 500. So that is the amount of damage that it can take before it breaks down. So to fortify that further, you have things like armored panels, which are again for early on, which can be snapped on the outer side. Well, since it's a generic panel, you can even snap it on the inside. So it's got, now I can't do it because I have, let me take this resource storage is out. Now I can place that on the inside as well. So now if I go back to my panel, if you notice, now the health has gone up to 900. So it's 500 by itself, but once I put on the panels, like the armored paneling on top, it gives it a bonus and it increases the overall health of the panel. Similarly, let me go one more panel here as an example, the generic panel. And as you go further in the game, you can then craft Aegis panels, which are a lot stronger. So you can have an Aegis panel on the outside and an Aegis on the inside. So the Aegis panel gives you a bonus, and if you notice now, my actual generic panel, the health has gone up to 1100. So these things are small things which you can use to make your base stronger, especially on the lower levels, so that it increases your damage taking capacity. In case the enemies do get to your base, if your base is not strong enough and it gets to your outer walls, something like this would give you a bit more time that you can come out and attack the few enemies that have managed to get close to it. So it's also helping you to sort of cut down the speed at which they can break down into your base and start destroying all the other components on the inside. So to get through this initially it has to do first 800, then it has to do 11, and then again 800. So it's a lot more compared to just having a panel which is 500. Makes it a lot easier to break than to break through this and then to go through the entire thing to get to the inside. So these are just small things that you can do to increase the strength and make your outpost, you know, more stronger, increase the damage taking capability. And normally you would have it on the lower levels more, because that's where, you know, most of your, like the scorpions and things like that, they would come down. You're not going to get them on the higher levels, so they would start breaking down the stuff on the lowermost level. The only exceptions are probably your nebulas, and that too if you take that risk incident card. Otherwise you're not going to encounter too many nebulas around. That's another thing. So yeah, a lot of things to go through. I think I'm going to stop it here for this one, because there's so many things. I'm just going through the basic portions, whatever I can think of, and as we go along I'll start giving more tips on, you know, like the advanced things, what you can do and how you can increase the height, because this is just one level. So there's a lot of things wherein now if I want to go to the next level, if you notice here, if I start just putting tiles, it's going to give me a power outage. So then there are ways of how you can actually, because the basic of this one is the power needs to be transferred from your lower levels up to your higher levels always. So there has to be some transference of power that has to be there. There's some connection that's required for it to transfer from the lower levels to the higher level. So that I will cover in maybe another video. I mean, it's going to get too lengthy otherwise, so that I will do on the next one. I hope you found some things useful in there. There could be a lot of things which everyone was already aware of, but hopefully there are some maybe new players who were not aware of certain things that you can and cannot do. So I think I will stop my video right here. Thank you for watching. Please do like and subscribe to my channel if you like my videos, and I'll see you guys on the next one hopefully. Take care. Bye guys.